Hey, this is Steven from LegitTechTutorials, and welcome to Beginning C. And in this tutorial, we're going to go over structures. I guess basically just the basics of structures. So this is the first time I'm going to be talking about it, but C is not an object-oriented programming language, which means that you basically organize things differently than something like C++, Java. I mean, pretty much everything else is object-oriented. So what you do is basically a structure is a data structure which only holds information that you want to have different. So you'll have different packages, right? For example, if you have a car, one car, well, first thing, let me get rid of this here. So we're back in tests. So to do that, right click on grades, hit exclude from project, go into your tutorials, go into your tutorials folder and drag tests back in. I guess we could also use the grades as another good example of that. So back to what our example was. Let's say you have a car, right? So each car has got a model, it's got a type, it's got gas mileage, it's got four-wheel or two-wheel drive. So, and that's going to be different from car to car. So that's why you would have a structure in C, is to have different types of things. So for example, let's say here that we have a struct. So here it's abbreviated struct, and you see that turns blue. So we're going to do like employee, and then we're going to go ahead, and there you see that Visual Studio automatically closes. So make sure you have a semicolon there at the very end. Yeah. So let's say we have, we didn't quite go over this yet. We'll have to go over this later, but yeah, don't worry about this right now. So there you go. So now each employee is going to be different. So we have all different types of different employees. They're going to have different first names. They're going to have different last names. They're going to have different ages. They're going to have a different gender, or they could have the same gender. And they're going to have different or the same hourly salary. So now that's similar to what we said about the car, or even let's do another struct, grades. So let's say we had a student for the grades, which will probably be our practice. So the students for our the structure student would be, each one has an int a, so they would have like this here, and then you would say, you copy this. So then you would have int year, school level. And then you would have in GPA, and so things like that. And each student is going to have a different first name, a different last name, a different age, possibly the same possibly the same age or different age, possibly the same gender or a different gender, possibly the same school level or a different school level, and possibly the same GPA, but most likely a different GPA. So that's why we would have these, as these are data structures. As you see, each part will store a certain type of data. So these are obviously different. This is an employee and this is a student. Some of them are similar, but some of them are different. For example, here we have double hourly salary, and then you could have, you know, char position, you know, what's the position in their company, similar to what you see here as int school level, but we would save it under a different primitive object. So that's why you'd have it. It's a data structure, and we'll go over that a lot later on, but it's to store data of things that are similar. So this is just like a function. You'd keep, you know, you'd keep everything in here. So anything that you could think of that would make this certain student or certain employee unique, you would have in there. And of course, I definitely need to start my new series where I talk about this stuff generically, not involving programming languages, you know, explaining what it is, and do 20 minutes or 15 minutes of just explaining what this is. Okay. So now, what else could you do? This, of course, even to me, is pretty confusing because I came from Java. So even this here not being object oriented. So what is the non-object oriented is that we can't put functions inside of the employee. We could only reference to these stored variables here. And then we could use, so basically compared to Java, everything in C is static. Doesn't have an object, so you can't say this because there is no object. Okay, so how would we do something like, how would we create a new object like this? So what they have is you could do different things. For example, let me look for my reference here. So let's say that we have a card. So let's say we do this. We have a structure called card, and this card contains what do we have? We're just gonna do char face, but inside this it uses pointers. We haven't gone over pointers yet, so I'm not going to include the pointers there. So then we could declare. So now we're going to construct those guys. So what we could do is we could say a struct. So that's the primitive type. It's basically just like a primitive type, just like you would, you know, declare an int. So here it would be int, and here's our struct. And then we're going to say card. So it's going to be a struct of type card, and what is the name identifier of it? We're going to call it a card. And then what are we going to do? We're going to go into that guy, and we're going to name. We're going to set those two. So for example, let's say that we had face and suit. So we would have like so we have face would be like a, let's do this to an int. So we would have like, let's say it's a 3 and the face is going to be a heart. So there you go. So it went in. Oopsies. So it went in there and it stored these two. So it said int face is 3 and int heart is h. So now let's use an example here. So then we could go individually too in there to set these. So let's say we do a card dot face. So here we could set the face. So it's saying look inside the structure, go to, the dot is go to face, and then well, it's got a different name or a different way of explaining it, but I say it's like go to. So it's a card and then go to face. So now we're in the face variable here and set it to a 5. So that way we could, and we could do the same thing by asking it where it's at. So let's say we want to do a print f, and then we say percent I, and then we say a card dot face. Now this should work. Of course, I did a lot of cutting. Come on. Yes! I did a lot of cutting from the book. So there it says 5, and do a / new line. So there, we have the 5. Okay, so now we have a data structure established that we're holding different content inside a structure. So now what if we wanted a different type? So let's say struct card, and we say card2, and we initialize this to a 10 and a spades. Then we go here, we're going to copy and paste this guy. And we're going to do a card 2 face. Alright, so remember card 1 is going to be 5 because we set 5 here, and card 2 is going to be 10. There you go. So now we have 2 separate structures that we could work with independently of each other and have 2 different stored information there that's always going to be saved. And then we could always go in and modify just by declaring the identifier of the structure that we created. So here we have a card, so that's the identifier of the type card of the structure, and then we can store the variables in there by calling to these here. So we're calling a card.face is equal to 5. Now, of course, in other programming languages, we would have this private and use getters and setters to modify these. But in this case, we cannot make it. This one has to be public in order to do this. I'm pretty sure. It's kind of hard teaching 3 languages at one time. Let's see what else we got. Okay, so here we have all this here uses yeah, so there's another thing called type dev, but we're not going to go over that right now. We're just going to go over this stuff here. So as you can see, we could do in this one program here, we can make all different kinds of structures here. So let's say we want to do an employee, and we want to call it Bill. And then you could set his first name to be you'd have like S T E V E E N. And then let's enter this down so you can see it. So that would be, for example, the first name. So you could either declare all of these in here, or you could not even do this. I believe it should still work, but there's not going to be anything in there. So if you do, because it'll automatically put this to null or 0, so everything in there is going to be 0. So for example, if we do copy this and we paste this and we say Bill dot, and then we're going to look at his age. So here you see age, and then we're going to do age. So here, of course, nothing in there is initialized. So let's just say we do this, and there's nothing in there. So yeah, so you do have to declare that in there. So for example, let's say that you prompted the user to create this structure here. And what you could do is you could just set it up to be nothing inside. So for example there, you could say have nothing, have nothing, have like 0, male, nothing, nothing. So there it says 0 for the age. And then we could go in and set all of these here. Or before you even create the structure, what I would do is have a variable store it, and then just point the variable here to create it. So we're going to also eventually get into talking about using different kinds of methods, pointing, passing in a variable. So of course you could have a function. So let's say you had a random function similar to the grades. So I'm going to go here and pull the grades back in so we can take a look at that. So let's say here we had the float. So for example, what we could do is inside our main we could pass, okay, so here we're using input here, and then see how it's passing something in there? We could use a struct and just pass in that variable that we want to pass in there. So it's basically what we're going to use this for is use this just for storage. So here's all of our storage. Here's where all of our variables are stored, and we could change them whenever we want by just calling to each of those instances and be able to do anything that we want. So we're going to do some practice on these structures and also do some method practice and further establish these, because this is the main part of programming, is being able to store and use data to do whatever you want. You know, have students, have employees, have cards for games, have characters, whatever. So you would use structures to hold those types of things, and we will go over that. We will go over some practice messing around with our grades and maybe even creating a employee program. So I will see you then. If you like this video, please subscribe for more videos like it in this series and other series. And if you have any questions, email me. And the book I'm using as a reference for this series is in the description. You can pick it up there if you want to read further and get a further understanding of C. And I will see you in the next tutorial, and thank you for watching. Take it easy.